Okay, so the other method, and this is what Mahamudra is. It sounds cute, and people go, "Oh, I'd rather have this one." As Lama Yeshe says, no dogma, no theory, no this, no that. So basically, what Mahamudra is, if it were music, instead of learning all the theories, you'd go straight to the piano and you'd intuit the music. Now, that's obviously advanced, isn't it? And it's really interesting. I think I might have mentioned this. You know, when I look on YouTube and I saw these genius little 6-year-old children, 5-year-old children playing Bach. And of course, in the Western view, we can't understand this. There's no logic to it. But in the Buddhist view, it's very obvious. They've done the work before. They've come into this life programmed with deep familiarity with music, such that they just go to the piano and it can all come out. Well, you could argue they're doing Mahamudra. They're going straight to it and they're intuiting it because, you know, they've done the work before. It doesn't come from the sky. So in a way, it's a more advanced technique, obviously, because it implies you've done the earlier work. So clearly it's more, but it doesn't mean we still can't try. And there's something very direct about that. Instead of, as Lama Yeshe would put it, instead of squeezing our brains with all the theories, you go straight to intuit. But you've got to have a lot of merit to do that. You've got to have a lot of clear understanding. I mean, the fact is, you know, if we look into the way we think about the mind in the West, and then we come along and we meet spiritual teachings, we think about meditation, we don't have much understanding, with greatest respect to us and our views, of what internally what's going on. We don't know how to deal with what's in our mind. We go completely crazy. We don't understand what thoughts are. We don't know that it is merely thoughts. We don't distinguish between negative and positive thoughts. We just know our head is full of chaos. So if you start to try and meditate, the mind is a pretty powerful thing. And as far as the Buddhist view is concerned, this mind of ours didn't start in our mother's womb, isn't made by somebody else, has come fully programmed from countless past lives. So there's bucket loads of, talk about memory. I mean, Buddha's view of memory goes back to beginningless times. Hilarious. So there's masses of stuff stored in our mind. So, I mean, as Lama Yeshe says, many people who don't understand what they're doing go off to learn to meditate and end up in a psychiatric hospital. And that is not joking. That's serious, because we don't understand our minds. And even as Buddhists, when we're learning the techniques, we still don't understand our minds. We don't know what to do with what's there. And that's the reason is because we take everything seriously in our head. That's why we all think we're hopeless, we're no good. We believe the negative thoughts. I'm bad, I'm ugly, I'm this, I'm depressed, I'm jealous. This is who I really am. I'm going to kill myself. Because we believe the thoughts in our head. So it's really quite an advanced thing to learn to know how to work on your mind, you know. Certainly the way the Buddhist approach is. So to go learn to find the way to learn to use Mahamudra, you've got to be a pretty stable person, basically. But it doesn't mean we can't try. And it's marvelous. And of course we did a little example last week. But so let's look at, though, the two modes of meditation and what they mean. Because basically Mahamudra meditation is a method that incorporates the two modes of meditation. In Buddhism, and you learn it in the sutra teachings, you learn it in the sutra teachings, there are basically two modes of meditation. Hundreds of techniques, thousands of techniques. You make up your own every day once you understand the principles of each of these methods. So the first, and this is so in the Lam Rim, in the packaging of the teachings that we are familiar with, it's taught at the end of the Bodhisattva path. But in their character, they're Hinayana teachings. They're not Mahayana in their character. So the two modes of meditation, the first one is generally known as a technique for getting concentration. So of course concentration to degrees of subtlety that we don't even posit as possible in neuroscience and modern psychology, because we're discussing accessing subtler levels of our mind, beyond sensory, beyond conceptual, eventually when we get there. So the first mode of meditation is learning how to concentrate. I mean, that sounds pretty simple. Concentrate. Oh, I can do that. So it's not, you know, in its nature, it's not a spiritual teaching. In its nature, it's not a spiritual teaching. You know, it's a practical technique, because you make it spiritual by learning with your motivation. So the second kind of meditation, so this first one is known in terms of its result. The result of this, when you've got this level of single-pointedness, it's called calm abiding. It's a sutra teaching. It's a Hinayana teaching. In fact, it comes from the Hindus. Technically, it's not even a Buddhist teaching, but of course Buddha took it with him when he diverged in his own direction. And it's a central technique in Buddhism. It's got its own specific way of teaching it. But it's invented by these genius Hindus well before the Buddha, 3,000 years plus ago. this marvelous technique, this psychological skill that enables you to completely subdue the sensory and the conceptual, which takes masses of work, and get to this subtler level. And it's called calm abiding, the name of the end result. And it's a type of single-pointed concentration. The word in Sanskrit for concentration is samadhi. And there are subtler levels, it seems, of this. I don't know exactly all the details. So then you've got the second mode of meditation, which is the point. And this is where we get very, very confused, these two. So the first one in Sanskrit is known as shamatha. And it's what happened? Okay, so the second one is known in English simply as insight. Or vipassana. So Buddha taught many insight techniques. So basically the one that's most popular, that's broadly known as vipassana, that people tend to think of only as vipassana, is this particular technique of using your first mode of meditation. You first get your concentration, then to the degree that you've got any concentration, you go to the second mode of meditation, and then what you do is and I've never done it, but it's there, it's Buddha's technique, you scan the different sensations of your body. So what does Buddha want us to get insight into? Well, honeys, not the body. He wants us to get insight into impermanence, how things are changing. There's many insight meditations he's teaching. So the one here that we learn in the sutra techniques in the Lam Rim, and here we're learning in Mahamudra, is we're trying to get insight into the ultimate way that things exist, emptiness. So there's different methods of this, and the Mahamudra is a very specific method for this. So the classic method of getting insight, and this is where we get very confused. If we're Tibetan Buddhists and we read the Lam Rim, we're going to hear there are two modes of meditation. One is called concentration or stabilization or whatever you call it, calm abiding. Then the second one we hear, it's called analytical meditation. And then we get completely confused. Well, let's just clarify that. And again, if we use ordinary examples of how we learn things, it'll make sense. But because we hear it as spiritual, we hear the word meditation, we mystify it, So first of all, what's very interesting, the Tibetan word for the verb to meditate, the verb gom in Tibetan, translates literally as to familiarize. We go, oh, that's curious, to familiarize. Well, first of all, you're going to familiarize your mind with what? Well, as far as the Buddhist view is concerned, you've got two things to familiarize your mind with. That which is true, which is wisdom, and that which is virtuous. That's it. So that's already throwing us. Oh, I thought meditation was watching your breath. Oh, I thought meditation was having no thoughts. Oh, I thought meditation was relaxation. We've got all these concepts, what we think meditation is. Well, first of all, Buddha doesn't own the word, okay? He's not copyrighted this word. Anybody can make up the word meditation, and you can make up your own meditations. There's no problem. But if you want to understand what Buddha's saying, you better see what he's saying, not just make up what we think he's saying. So like I said, there are two modes. The point of all of the meditation is the second one. The first is just the preparation. But often what the world thinks is that getting concentration, steadying the mind down, calming the mind down, that is the point of meditation. Well, no, it's not. It's only the beginning. Another way that people think is, they often use the word mindfulness to refer to this meditation. Well, that's kind of sort of true, but not really. So let's look at these words, okay? And let's look at what the mind is doing. So really demystify it. Well, that's why we have to learn about the Buddha's view of the mind. We have to learn to know the contents of our mind and what the parts of our mind are doing. So basically, there are two, we've got the grosser level of we've got the grosser level of cognition, which is conceptuality. Forget the senses, okay? Then dismiss those. Within the mental consciousness, and that's the part of your mind that meditates, we've got conceptuality, the thinking, which includes all our emotions and feelings. And that's surprising to us because we think emotions and feelings are more subtle than thinking. No, they're just the packaging of thinking. Emotions are rooted in thinking. In other words, when you see a person shouting and yelling, and you say, oh, she's angry, what you're noticing is the body flailing about. You're noticing the words shouting out of her mouth. You notice, spit coming out. Her eyes are wide. She's kind of freaking out and saying very irrational things. So we deduce she's angry. But what's anger? Anger's not the body. The body is the gross expression, and it's carrying out the wishes of the angry thoughts. It all comes down to thoughts. So when you hear the words coming out of your mouth and you analyze them, you hear, well, that's interesting, she's angry. So anger is a function of the mental consciousness. And that's one example of the first grouping of the thoughts we've got, which are the negative ones, the neurotic ones, the deluded ones, the I-based ones, the fear-based ones, the ones that are the source of our own suffering and the source of why we harm others. They're the negative or neurotic states of mind. And they're all got the emotional component, but that's just the physical, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Whereas for us, we think it's the opposite. We think feeling is more subtle. No, it's very gross. The emotional component of shouting and yelling or feeling very physically beautiful when something lovely happens, that's just the body. They're rooted in the mind, which is deeper down, and basically they're all conceptual thoughts. That's where we have to start looking more deeply into our mind every day in our daily practice. So we've got the negative states of mind, the neurotic, deluded, miserable, unhappy, I-based, fear-based states of mind, which the Buddha says we can get rid of, which is the long-term job. The second category of states of mind we've got are all the positive ones: love, compassion, kindness, generosity, wisdom. And they're all mixed together like a big soup right now with all the negative ones. And our trouble in our culture is we give them equal status. We think a normal person has some negative, some positive, some love, some depression, hopefully more of the positive than the negative. But we don't ever have any views in our neuroscience or our psychology, radically different from the Buddha, that we can rid the mind of all the neuroses. And this is the long-term job of being a Buddhist. This is the job of being a Buddhist. This is the job of being a Buddhist, to begin to steady the mind down so you can distinguish between the neuroses and the virtues, so you can lessen and eventually eradicate the delusions and grow and perfect the virtues. That is the actual job. This is so simple, the words. That's the actual job of being a Buddhist. So the way to do that skillfully, best way, is in context of these meditations, these skillful methods. So the third category of states of mind, and this is what we're getting to now with concentration meditation, you know, they call them neutral. They call them this negative, neurotic, deluded, positive or virtuous. And then the third lot, they say neutral, they don't really mean not important. We really misunderstand that. And this is not the way we use to understand our thoughts in modern psychology. This third lot, I like to call them the mechanics of the mind. So you've got concentration, good memory, intention, attention, discrimination. There's many of these, and these are the ones that enable you to function. Whether you're a murderer or a meditator, you need good concentration. Whether you're a murderer or a meditator, you need discrimination. These are the mechanics of the mind. I like to call it that. So they're vitally important, but they're neither neurotic or deluded in their character, nor are they virtuous in their character. So we don't use these terms in modern psychology. So we need to get used to the way Buddha uses these words, you know. So this third lot, these are the ones that are doing the job of helping us concentrate. So the word mindfulness is a big one in the modern world, but we really have a gross misunderstanding of it, I think. It's in the third category. It's not a virtue. It's not a non-virtue. It's the mechanics. So what makes what you do virtuous then, so concentration meditation in its nature is not virtuous. A person can learn concentration so they can become a good murderer. Concentration is made virtuous by your motivation. So another one in there's concentration, intention, attention, alertness, discrimination. There's another one called mindfulness. Technically, that's simply the ability to remember what you're doing moment by moment. So clearly, as Lama Zopa says, thieves need mindfulness. But the way we use the word is practically its own religion in the West, with a capital M. We put all these bells and whistles on top of it. It's simply the capacity to not forget what you're doing second by second. That, you know, when you've got Alzheimer's and when you've got dementia, that's disappeared. You can't remember second by second what you just did. That's not an uncommon thing. That means the capacity of this mind, the third category, called the mechanics, which I call it, that's gone completely. There's no longer any mindfulness. You no longer have the capacity to keep on track of what you're doing second by second. It's called memory, basically, short-term memory. So these are all the mechanics of the mind, and these are what we have to use and cultivate in concentration meditation. So forget the insight, we'll get to that one. So concentration meditation is this brilliant skill invented by these Indians 3,000 plus years ago, okay? And it's enormously difficult. I mean, it's easy, but it's difficult. So I remember I always quote this and talked about one of our colleagues, a monk, Venerable Rene, a Swiss monk, who's been a meditator most of his life. I mean, since, we both met the Dharma at a similar time, and he went straight off to learn to meditate. He studied all his life. He's a monk. So I interviewed him back in 1995 in Mandala magazine, our magazine of our organization, FPMT, when I was the editor. And I interviewed him about his retreat. It was very interesting. He was doing a single-pointed concentration retreat. So that to get to be ready, to have the prerequisites that enable you to be ready to even go to the mountains, theoretically or metaphorically or literally, and you need very specific conditions. Going to the mountain is not a joke. It's probably the best conditions in order to get this concentration. And even by that point, you're already a highly evolved being. I mean, there are several that Pavanka Rinpoche talks about in his Lam Rim. There are many qualities you need in order to be prepared to even go to the mountains. I mean, to get concentration, we know ourselves. I mean, you try for 3 minutes in the morning and your mind's a disaster. And then before you know it, you've got to think of breakfast and think of the kids and think of this and think of that. Our lives are so full of other things. It's not possible to have enough time to get concentration. You need this really perfect environment. So the ideal environment, for example, would be up in the mountains is not just a joke. It's sort of not just physically pristine. It's also kind of spiritually, they say, it's very pure and the energy is very subtle. You need to be near with really good food and good water. You should not be around where there are lots of crazy wild animals because it's too distressing for your mind. You've got to be where there's not much noise, you've got to be quiet. And you need many, many different conditions for it to be conducive for you to be able to get concentration. So what was so fascinating too about this is one of the other qualities, a crucial quality they all say is the main one, that is really makes the place so conducive to good meditation, is that it's been blessed in the past by the presence of previous meditators, holy beings in other words. So this is a really interesting example. I interviewed Venerable Rene about this retreat several years later, or 95, he'd done the retreat several years before. I interviewed him at Kopan Monastery in the Kathmandu Valley. Now, if anybody's been there, these days, it used to be much more quiet, of course, but now it's like, it's on a hill, out of Kathmandu, and then below it's like all just suburbs now. It used to all be just, fields. So it's totally noisy, it's totally busy, not to mention it's a monastery of 400 monks and little monks and all shouting and yelling and moving around. So there's lots of noise there. So you'd think it'd be not conducive to good meditation. But he told me when I interviewed him that at Copan, where it's so much more busy, and he did his retreat in our center in Spain, in the Sierra Nevada, out, not far from Granada, at our center called Ursel Ling, Place of Clear Light. It was named by His Holiness the Dalai Lama in 1982. And that's where Lama Ursel, his parents lived there, were doing the center, and Lama Ursel, Lama Yeshe's reincarnation, was born near there. So it was named by His Holiness in 82. The Place of Clear Light. So His Holiness said it was wonderful. It reminded him of Tibet, he said. It's like an ancient little place up in the mountains. So it's a retreat place since then. And, little cabins and caves, almost like caves, little rock places to meditate, seemingly a perfect place to meditate. So he did his first tour. I think it was 1.5 or 2.5 years of this particular retreat that I interviewed him about. And it was perfect. All the conditions were perfect. But he said, you see, okay, so concentration in the texts is described in terms of 9 stages of concentration, 9 stages of development that culminate in this single-pointedness. So he said that he knew he got to the 5th of those 9 stages fairly quickly, maybe after 6 months, but he spent another year or more, but he said he knew he couldn't get further than that 5th of those 9 stages. So anyway, he stopped his retreat there, and I interviewed him in Kopan. So even though that place is ideal as a retreat place, because Kopan is blessed by the presence of holy beings, and you speak to any Tibetan, they love Kathmandu Valley. When we go with our gross vision, we just see a gross polluted place, and it is polluted. really polluted, but they see a holy place, completely pervaded by the energy of all the Buddhas and has been blessed by the presence of meditators over the centuries, since the time of the Buddha, you know. So for them, it's a really blessed place. And he said, you know, that his mind, when he meditated at Kopan, his mind got more subtle, more easily than it did at Öselling, which would seem to have been a more conducive place. So this is really indicating one of the most powerful prerequisites for a place that's most conducive to good meditation is where previous yogis, great meditators, have meditated. It blesses the place. It brings the Buddhas there. So I find that very fascinating. But to even qualify to go to the mountains, he said that no way in the world would he have been qualified to go off to this place, to live there for a year and a half or 2.5, I forget, because you're going to be in 4 to 6 to 8 sessions a day. You do nothing else. You're so focused. And you look how hard it is to concentrate even for 5 minutes, the effort we have to make because the mind is so demented. But to have this discipline day after day after day, 8, 10, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, you know, 4 weeks a month, 12 months a year, you've got to have a pretty subdued mind. Think about it. I mean, how could you possibly, if you've got your normal life, even if you haven't got husbands and children and mortgages, look at all the daily activities of our daily life that we imagine we can't do without. I'm not trying to be rude, but look at to be able to walk off and turn around now and not look back and not have one thing to think about. That's pretty rare. Think about it. So you've got to have a pretty subdued mind already. And as Pabonka Rinpoche talks about in the Lam Rim, you've got to have completely no interest in food, be very content with whatever you're given. I mean, look at us with our food. We're beyond neurotic, you know. Most of us. This is how we are. You have no mortgages, no husbands, no children, or at least no responsibilities. So, because normally your mind is full of all the dramas of your daily life, isn't it? That's exactly what you want to get your mind rid of. And all the meditators say, especially if you're coming from the West, it takes weeks, if not months, for gradually the mind to calm down and stop thinking of all these things. I mean, our mind is just full of what we see and do and think every day, and it's stirred up constantly, you know. So you need this very particular state of being, a lot of practice in the past, and then the appropriate conditions, and then the effort and the discipline, and the preparedness to work for months and years on end. That's pretty intense, you know. But it's a doable technique. It's been accomplished by millions of people over the centuries. The Lord Buddha would say we've had it in many lifetimes, we've lost it, we haven't used it to realize emptiness and then get out of samsara, so we lose the plot and forget it again. So Venerable Rene said there's no way in the world he would have been qualified to go there to do this retreat had he not been a monk, meaning living in vows of morality, had he not done study for years, and had he not even done the teachings for years. They are what prepared his mind. Because you see, meditation itself, watching your breath or watching the Buddha or focusing on something, is technically easy. But why it's so traumatic and difficult for us is because our minds are so crazy. And if you don't know what the mind is from the Buddhist perspective, if you can't distinguish between a negative and a positive state, if you can't have the ability to not buy into the negative ones, if you don't know all these things as your background, you don't know what to do with what arises, you know. So people go nuts. They end up in a psychiatric hospital. Not a joke. So the technique itself is technically easy, but to qualify to get to do it, wow, that's the hard work, you know. So, okay, what is involved then in concentration meditation? Well, basically, like I said, there's these various parts of your mind. So the parts that do the job, that all work together, are the parts called intention, attention, concentration, mindfulness, discrimination. I mean, that's just 5 parts of your mind. Think of your mind as many bits and pieces, and the bits and pieces of your mind are thoughts. So now, the negative thoughts, they have no role in meditation, and they're always the ones that are getting in the way, right? The positive thoughts, even they have no role in this concentration meditation. The purpose of concentration meditation isn't to have positive thoughts. No, you don't want any kind of rubbish. Tell them all to go away. You're training your mind so you start with intention. I am going to watch my breath for 5 minutes. That's intention. And then what you do is so the part of your mind that watches, let's say you've decided the breath is your object. in Mahamudra, it's not that, but I'm giving you an example. Let's say the breath is your object. So you first have to decide, I am going to watch my breath. Believe me, you will not sit, your bottom will not sit on a cushion, and your eyes won't close, and your mind won't start looking at your breath until you decide. And the decider is not an I. We think I decide. No, intention decides. Intention. So once you've got the intention, then the other parts of your mind and all the bits of the body all working together, you sit down, you close your eyes, you sit on your bottom, and then you decide what you're going to do. So what is it you're going to do? Well, you're going to watch the breath. Sounds pretty simple. Now, let's ask the question, what part of my mind is watching the breath? Well, keep it simple like anything. I'm going to say the words, I am going to hold my thermos in my right hand. So then think about this. Which part of I is holding the thermos? Well, there it is, the right hand. Be precise. Now, look at the pieces of my right hand that are all working together to accomplish the job of holding the thermos. My thumb does this. My little finger does that. My ring finger does this. My index finger does that. And they all work together. And so the job of holding the cup is now accomplished. Well, it's the same with your mind. But we get also mystical. Well, I'm watching the breath. Then I'm watching my mind. We get so complicated. So look at the parts of your mind. What are they doing? Well, in the beginning, the main pieces we are trying to train. Well, first of all, before we even start that, the piece of your mind that does the looking is called attention. Pay attention. So you're going to pay attention to the breath. Attention, you see, some of these parts of your mind, attention, intention, all these ones that I'm mentioning, intention, attention, I mean, not all of them, but they're there all the time, every second, and they're all working away, but we don't notice them. We don't even have this ability to discriminate these parts of our mind. We don't think like this, you know? So intention is the first one, I will. Then attention homes in. So you locate. So this is where discrimination comes in. Discrimination is one of the parts of our mind that's working every millisecond. And every millisecond, if you're looking around the room, for example, you know, in my room, there are many different things. There's a lamp, there's this, there's a thermos, there's a water thing, there's a picture, there's a tap, there's a cushion. So discrimination is the ability, second by second, to discriminate between this and that. This is an absolutely vital part of your mind. If that's gone, you are a mad person. You won't survive. You can't live your life. It's not possible. That is vital to have. So this is a crucial one in the practice of Dharma, in the practice of being your own therapist. Discrimination is the ability internally, when you're living your daily life, to distinguish between anger, let's say distinguish between attachment and love, for example. For us right now, they're like mixed together like a big soup, but attachment is a delusion, love is a virtue. Discrimination is one of the parts of your mind that is able to see the difference between them. This is a vital part of your mind. So here, discrimination is working every second, discriminating the breath from this, from this, from that. It's got to be working every second. So what you're trying to train, so the two main obstacles in meditation, in other words, why our mind at this moment isn't single-pointed in concentration is because of two main obstacles. One is what they call the function of the mind, the capacity, the mind being overexcited. Well, that's the function of attachment. Attachment isn't just, oh, I like chocolate cake. Attachment is thoughts. And they're these overexcited, delusional thoughts that are never stopping, second by second, that go to very subtle levels. And its energy is dissatisfaction. Its energy is always wanting something more. So attachment is all the time there. So one of its functions is we never stop thinking about things. So a sign of attachment, for example, is you think about your boyfriend all the time. You think about chocolate cake all the time. You worry, when we chew things like a dog with a bone, when we worry about things, when we're anxious, we're never stopping thinking about things. So that's the function of the mind, to be overexcited, to be never ending chatting away uncontrollably. That is obviously the major obstacle to why you can't keep your mind still. So then the other extreme is your mind becoming completely sinking into dullness. So we know ourselves, if you try to sit down to concentrate, to do 5 minutes of meditation, either your mind goes completely berserk and you forget what you're doing and you're off there into the, la la land thinking about your boyfriend again, or you completely space out. The two extremes. So one way of describing the development of concentration as is this ability to steady the excitement and to stop the mind from being dull, because the mind is rushing between these two extremes all the time. So the great skill we need to cultivate is to discriminate between these and to grab the mind before you start spacing out, before you start rushing off thinking about your boyfriend or thinking about breakfast or something, you know. So then as you're developing through these 9 stages, it's the lessening of the excitement and the lessening of the dullness until you have got what they call super perfect mindfulness. Your mind is able to not lose the object. You're able to stay there second by second by second without being up and down like yo-yos. That's how you're developing mindfulness, this capacity for short-term memory. Then another one you're trying to cultivate is what they call alertness. So Dalai Lama calls it, it's sort of like, he says alertness or vigilance, they call it, is like a policeman watching all the bits and pieces do their job. And then under that is called mindfulness, which is the ability to not forget what you're doing. And that's supported by attention. That's supported by discrimination. It's supported by all these different qualities in the mind, all working away. The goal of this is to have your mind stably on one thing without wavering, So that's the idea. That's what's going on in concentration meditation. Now the thing is, we have all these misconceptions about it. We say, I tried to concentrate, I tried to meditate, but it didn't work. I remember somebody saying that. Well, that's like saying, I tried to play tennis like Roger Federer and it didn't work, so I gave up. I mean, that's just like absurd. Nothing can be achieved overnight. It's completely bizarre. But the commonest problem we have is because when you start to meditate, when you close your eyes and make a decision to stay focused on your breath, for example, you're making a strong effort to not buy into every thought. But suddenly you can't believe how many thoughts are there. And you all think, and even in the text it says this, that one of the signs of success at the first of these 9 stages is that you think your mind's getting worse. Well, your mind is not getting worse. You're just noticing what's always been there before because we've never paid attention to our mind until the thoughts are screaming like maniacs. That's our problem. So the obstacle, of course, is all the thoughts there. But our problem is we're so neurotic, as soon as we hear all the negative thoughts, I can't concentrate, my thoughts are too berserk. Well, that's obvious. Join the universe. What's special? Of course you can't concentrate because your mind's berserk. That's the whole point. So you've got to start practicing. But don't have expectations. One of the biggest problems is we think somehow I start to meditate for 5 minutes, we assume our mind should calm down. I mean, don't be ridiculous. That's like expecting to play like Federer after 1 class. It's just absurd expectations. That's the problem. The problem isn't that your mind is berserk. The problem isn't that you can't concentrate. The problem is as we have these bizarre fantasy expectations of what we should have accomplished. That's the problem. And then the other thing is because we can't stand all the ugly thoughts, we can't stand the depression and the anxiety and the anger and the fears and the drama, we have a panic attack because we would just wish they would all go away. But this is just nonsense. We've got to have courage, in other words. We've got to have courage. It's almost like we've got to make friends with all these crazy thoughts, not just resist them and wish they wouldn't be there. That's how we spend our lives. That's why we have different methods. Some people, we can't stand the thoughts, so we just pretend they're not there. We live in denial. And other people never stop thinking about the thoughts and go completely crazy and want to kill people or themselves. But we've got to learn to know that the thoughts have been there since countless lifetimes. They're completely uncontrolled simply because we've never learned to control them, not in this life, and that we can do it, and we have to have the courage to know the proper techniques, not to have fantasy expectations, to know how to identify what's there, and to know what to do with it. I mean, these are the things that are so important. That's why for Venerable Rene, he said he wouldn't have been qualified to go off to the mountains to do this retreat, but for those years of hard work and purification and living in vows and studying the Dharma and knowing what's going on, So it's quite a big thing. So any questions before I continue? Any questions, darling people? I've been talking about the mind. Just beginning to discuss concentration. Yes, Paul. Talk to me.
So yeah, Whatever you're describing, I've been going through for years now, meditating and watching myself. And you pointed out a word that I want to, a little bit checking into that. You said your mind could be going berserk or dull.
That's right.
So
they're
for
the two
me,
extremes.
True. I've been going through panic attacks over the years. I've been off of them just because concentrating more and more, understanding that those thoughts that panic me weren't me. So slowly I got to a point where that silence could be there, just me watching my thought and going deeper into observing. So for me, saying dull, I want to understand, what do you mean by dull?
Okay. The two extremes we have, we can see this, can't we, Paul? Some days, the characteristics. Okay, we can see that the mind can sometimes, the two delusions, the two extremes that we're trying to avoid and go beyond in concentration, and we can develop this skill, is the tendency of the mind to never stop chatting, right? That's called excitement. It's the overexcited, uncontrolled, never stopping thinking. Now that is join the universe. That's normal because we've never learned how to control. So that the excitement is when the mind is so strong it's too difficult. The endless conversations. So when the mind is overexcited, now there's a particular characteristic of that mind, and this is a good quality. It's very sharp, isn't it? And very clear and very sharp. And you'll be very wide awake. So the good quality there is the sharpness. So we want to retain the sharpness, but we don't want the berserkness. So then the other extreme of the mind is when you sit down to meditate, you'll go straight to sleep. You'll space, people call it spacing out. So dullness, and this is a real danger because some people have the capacity to sit down and be very comfortable sitting there quietly, and they can mistake that for good meditation. But actually, the mind is completely dull, and that just creates the cause to become ignorant and stupid. So this is my way of talking. So the two extremes are the mind to be berserk or the mind to be very dull. So the good quality of a dull mind is you're very quiet. The good quality of a very excited mind is the mind is very sharp. Can you hear what I'm getting at here, Paul? So what we're trying to do as we develop the skill to meditate, you retain the sharpness, but not the excitement, and you retain the calm, but not the dullness. And that's the perfect meditating mind, when it's super clear, sharp as a needle, radiantly clear, but super calm. And we don't have those two together in our normal life. We either have calm because it's dull, like going to sleep, or we have sharp, but it's mixed with berserk and excited. That's my way of saying it. Do you get my point now? And that's why we have to have these very precise, we have to have really clear instructions. Otherwise we go in the completely wrong direction, Paul. One of the biggest problems is some people, as I said, are very comfortable sitting there quietly, but they mistake it for concentration. But in fact, the mind is it's almost like going to sleep. It feels very nice, but it's not meditation, and it's a complete mistake. You with me?
It's saying going to sleep for me, going to sleep, that means dullness. I understood as a point because for me, meditating sometimes can be comfortable. I know where the noisiness is, okay, guys?
You say meditating. Now that we're discussing it, could you please tell me what type of meditation do you do? What's the label for this technique that you use?
My technique is just breathing, and after the breathing, I just get to this point of concentration where I can literally go into that silence, me observing.
But what's the point of this meditation? What's the goal? What are you trying to accomplish?
I'm trying to figure out what I am besides my thoughts. I mean, I'm trying to understand what it's actually, what those thoughts are, But now it's definitely more clear since you're pointing out, all of this,
So thank you, Paul. So the Buddhist approach is we need the concentration because then the mind is stable. So now the point is, though, this is the point here now, we're going to get to the next one. The reason to have a focused mind, an undisturbed mind, an unexcited mind, an undull mind, meaning a super sharp mind, which in itself is very delicious, but that's not the purpose. I'm not discussing what you're saying now. I'm telling you what I'm learning from the Buddhist techniques. So the purpose of that concentration is now to use it in the second mode of meditation in order to, and this is what you're broadly saying, to get insight into lots of things. One is to get insight into impermanence. So basically, if you're a Buddhist, you're learning about impermanence, you're learning about karma, you're learning about the nature of mind, you learn the nuts and bolts of Buddha's view of the universe. So naturally, if I'm studying like I'm studying music, the reason when I get to the piano, think of this, the reason I want concentration is what? What would be the reason I need good concentration if I'm learning to play piano, Paul? What would be the reason I need good concentration?
Learning, definitely.
So I can play the piano without forgetting what I'm doing. So that's the insight mode. So the concentration is merely a technique to do the second one, which is now internalize the theories, make them real and direct experiential. So what Buddha wants us to get insight into, quote unquote, is how things are impermanent, into emptiness, the ultimate one, into karma, into everything that he's talking about, how reality is. That's the Buddhist approach. So the reason to have concentration is so we can get insight, and that's the second mode of meditation. And there are many ways of doing that. So you said it broadly, you want to understand who you are, etc., etc. Now, I don't know what techniques you're using for that, but this I'm describing the way we learn and how to do it. So it's very practical. Now, the interesting point is also this, and Lama Yeshe talks about this in his Mahamudra book. He said, we've got to have concentration for the very purpose I just said, so we can then do the proper techniques of getting insight. But, he said, there are incredible qualities that once you've got single-pointed concentration, he said they're almost unbelievable. You won't imagine the qualities that you will accomplish, the bliss, the clarity, the joy, the effortless ability to, the mind is almost as big as the universe. There's so many so many advantages, so many that show us, and why Lama Yeshe talks about this is because he wants to show us how we've got this amazing human potential. Even before we get anywhere near doing insight, concentration itself brings many, many, many amazing advantages. So this is where we can also get caught up and think, I'm not discussing you, Paul, but people in the world, because some people like to sit down, some people have a certain technique and can experience bliss and things like this. We think that's the purpose, but they're like the byproduct. They're like the bonus. The simple sole purpose to have concentration, think of it in terms of music. The only reason to have concentration is so you can get insight into the music. The only reason you have concentration when you make a cake is so you can make the cake. The only reason you have concentration when you're studying math is so you can internalize the math. So concentration here is the same, but it happens to bring many advantages, and we can get very caught up in those advantages and then lose the plot. Are we communicating, people? Are we communicating, Paul?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
No,
Good.
but for me, the results of a good concentration, it makes me definitely a better person. This is how I measure it. Am I calmer am I less reactive? Am I into that? This kind of, it tells me if my process it's going to the right direction. Do I, when in a difficult situation,
if your concentration meditation enables you to be clearer about what's going on in your mind when your day-to-day life, to own your own rubbish, to stop blaming and stop getting angry and stop getting attached and stop getting jealous, then you can say you're being successful. That's good. Okay, that you're getting insight into your mind.
This is how I measure it.
Well, good.
And then,
good. Okay, then
last time you talked about very nicely with I don't remember the name of the guy that was speaking last time, and I really liked the fact that you said about the second wing of
the two wings of the bird. Yeah.
Right, but and then concentration on wisdom, and then you said the concentration on because we all want to help. At a certain point, you want to be a
benefit to others.
But then for me, it resonated very much because it's a lot of the wisdom that I have to go even deeper before we go to the.
That's right. Exactly. That's exactly right. Paul.
So so
good.
It resonated very deeply.
Good, Paul. I'm very happy. That's great. Are there any other questions, people, about what I've been discussing? Yes, Eileen, talk to me, darling.
I do have a question about the dullness and about falling asleep.
Yes.
I have a disability that keeps me from being able to sit on a cushion for much longer than about 15 minutes.
I understand.
So I have a broken spine, and I need to be able to lay down when I meditate.
I understand.
So unfortunately, that leads to me falling asleep.
That's right. Exactly. We know that, don't we?
Yeah, so it's difficult, and it's actually kind of embarrassing.
No, of course, I understand, darling. Yeah.
A lot of times I'm on I'm on a live Zoom with, some of the venerable, leaders from, the different places to do the, meditation, and I'm asleep. So
Well, then
I turned my.
Then you don't need to do these meditations. I mean, it's going to make you go to sleep. There's no benefit. It's better for you to sit up and walk around and listen to teachings and try to think about it on the road, on the go. So don't have to sit and meditate. There's no benefit if you go to sleep. There's no benefit. There's nothing intrinsic about sitting quietly if you can't use it properly.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm getting something out of it to a degree, but then I all of a sudden I'm snoring, and
that's
it's
right.
like,
There's no advantage. So then, if you can't stop that, stop meditating, please. There's no benefit. It's much better to listen to the teachings, walk around, sit up, walk around, and listen to the teachings, and train your mind to listen. If you can't sit, and that's it. I mean, it's nothing we don't have to. Some of us can learn to get concentration. Some of us right now, that's not particularly the right thing for us.
It's just not. Yeah,
I'm
just having a really hard
time. No problem, Eileen. I understand that. So you have to be reasonable, be sensible.
Okay.
Adjust to your own conditions. Each one of us has to do that.
Okay.
Good.
Is there a way to focus on coping with pain when? Are there meditations for that?
It's not a question of meditations. It's a question of thinking differently, and this is the part that's very hard. I mean, of course, because we're all addicted to wanting nice feelings, and we all can't stand unnice feelings. And in both cases, and this is what we don't understand, then the pain looms large for us. And so we know when there's pain, it looms so large, it dominates the whole of our life. We can't think of anything else, can we? This is the problem.
No.
So it's the same with anything. It's like when I think about my friends in prison. When you're in a garbage dump called a prison, you're treated like an animal, especially if you're innocent. That looms so large in your mind, you can think of nothing else. Get my point here? So the job, if you're trying to be, some of my friends in prison who I admire, they've learning to accept, this is my garbage dump, this is where I live, and learning to not have it loom so large, and then to learn to train the mind to think of other things and make the most of that situation. Well, you could argue it's exactly the same with pain, although it feels much more intense because it's the physical body. But theoretically, we're capable of this. Theoretically, we are capable of this. And all of this means we've got to understand the way the mind works in the way Buddhism describes, which means we have to understand attachment, we have to understand aversion, we have to understand all these things, so then we can learn to reframe what we're experiencing. And I think even in modern psychology, people use techniques like this, learning to see it differently, Eileen, learning to interpret it differently. It's not easy, but it's possible.
Okay.
And again, the other thing to remember, which is very sobering, and it seems very cruel, you see, Buddha's fundamental point is, my friends in prison who are wrongly accused and living in these garbage dumps are not suffering because they've been wrongly accused. They're suffering because they have attachment and aversion and freak out and jealousy and rage. So the reason we suffer when it's physical pain is not because of the pain, it's because of the aversion to the pain, because of attachment and the addiction to not having the pain. So it's the states of mind that cause us suffering. This is very hard to see, but it's a very precise point.
Okay.
You understand, darling?
Yes.
Good.
Yes, absolutely.
Good, darling. Thank
you.
Yes, Luann.
Hi, Venerable. Thank you for the teaching today. I really appreciate it.
Good.
And I was going to ask you something that you sometimes say, and I want to see where it fits in to this, is you say, and I use your saying a lot, which is like, watch your mind like a hawk. And, how does that fit into this?
It all depends
please. Thank you.
on the meditation you're doing. So concentration meditation is a very specific, very narrow, very precise technique where you decide you're going to pay attention to one thing, and you're training your mind to stay on that one thing. So that one thing, a simple example that Buddha first uses, the thing to choose as your focal point is, for example, the breath, the sensation here. Okay? So if we take that, because you're always going to have a focal object. In Mahamudra, the object we're going to concentrate on, and we haven't gone there yet, the object we're going to concentrate on is not the breath, but is the very thoughts themselves, which initially seems more subtle to us. But let's just give the example of using the object called the sensation at the tip of your nose as you breathe in and out. You decide, I'm going to focus on that. I'm going to pay attention to that. These are very simple words, but we get very confused. So that's your job. That's your job, to learn to meditate. This particular one is concentration. So you decide, I'm going to watch my breath. Now, what happens, we know, is you start to watch the breath, but it's like you're in a room of 100 people all shouting and yelling. And guess what that shouting and yelling is? It's your own thoughts all barging in like a river. I mean, it's like a river of thoughts, uncontrolled. Now, it's been like this since we were born, but we don't pay attention to those thoughts until they start shouting, until they start becoming emotional. Are you hearing my point, Luann? So most of the time we're focusing on driving the car. We're focusing on what the boyfriend says. We're focusing on washing the dishes. We're doing all our jobs, but we know behind is all these endless thoughts. So then when they're not shouting too much, we don't care. But when they start to shout, that's when we get distracted, isn't it? Do you understand what I'm saying? So the job is, when you start to learn to concentrate on the breath, for example, the simple job to be accomplished, it's really technically quite easy, is to simply, it's like you're in a room with those 100 people, I use this example, and you've decided you're going to watch that spot on the wall. You've got your eyes open, it's just an analogy, and you know the 100 people are there, but you're not going to ask them to go away, you're not going to ask them to be quiet, you're going to learn to strengthen your own will to keep your mind on that spot on the wall and let the people be. Now, what happens with us is, I'm going to concentrate on my breath, and then suddenly all the roommates start shouting, and we wander off, having a dialogue with the anger, then we're having a dialogue about the boyfriend, and before you know it, you've lost the plot. You have no idea what you're doing because you're giving into all the thoughts. So this is the job to be done. That's what concentration is, to the point where you can be in that room of 100 people, and you can be so focused, and this is, again, an analogy, you won't even hear their thoughts. Now, we know we can do that. When we're totally focused, let's say, on reading something, or totally focused on watching something like a video, and you're completely immersed in the story, you don't even notice all the people in this kitchen shouting, because you've got some semblance of focus on what you have decided you're going to focus on. So here, we're using the breath as a simple example, as a way of training our mind to stay focused. Now, why do you want to stay focused? Because you're trying to stop following every damn thought. You're trying to give less power to the thoughts. Because as long as you keep arguing with that anger in your mind, you're going to keep building up the anger. But if you let the anger just be there and you focus on the spot on the wall, then it will diminish. So it's a skillful means to enable us to not buy into all the thoughts. You let them be there. Our problem is we think, oh, my thoughts are there, I can't meditate. Well, of course you can. You have to decide, that's all, and let the thoughts be there. But this is massively difficult, because every thought that arises in our mind, we think it's serious, and we start believing this is who I am, and we all go crazy. So the particular function in this meditation is not to watch your mind. It's to watch the breath. But out of the corner of your eye, you can't help but hear the thoughts. Now, in your daily life, you don't start watching the breath, honey. You'll kill yourself. When you're driving the car, you concentrate on the driving, for God's sake. When you're washing the dishes, you concentrate on washing the dishes. But in your mind, because you're becoming more familiar, you're hearing the thoughts more and more clearly, and you're catching them and averting them and changing them and arguing with them. That's your daily job while you're living your life. But while you're doing concentration meditation, that's not your job. Your job is to stay focused on the breath. That's the function of concentration meditation. Are you with me?
What amount of time are you, I mean, you've worked with so many people teaching this and whatever, it's kind of what is the amount of time that you recommend when people are in their, in their beginning stages?
To do what?
To sit and watch the breath.
I'd say just 3 minutes is a brilliant start. We sit down there, people sit down there for 25 minutes. I mean, that's insane. 99% of that time is spacing out. There's no benefit whatsoever. There are different methods, but this is not the way we would learn it. So even if you do 3 quality minutes of real focus, that's much more quality than 20 minutes of spacing out. But it's up to each person. This is just the first method of the first mode of meditation. The goal is then to use that in the second mode, which we haven't even going to discuss yet. So, this is what, so Venerable Rene in his concentration meditation retreat, 2.5 years, he would have been just doing the concentration. He wouldn't have been using the breath. There's different methods we can use. We can use visualizations. We can focus on the body of the Buddha, different things we can do. He would have been solely doing concentration to train the mind to go completely beyond the conceptual and beyond the sensory and access these subtler levels, That's the long term. So it's up to each one of us if we're trying to just get concentration. Start with 3 minutes. 5 minutes is brilliant. But 5 minutes even is a long amount of time if you're trying to keep the mind alert. So it doesn't mean you can't. So this is the point now. So concentration meditation isn't relaxation. It is not wishing the thoughts would go away. It is not an alternative to a pill, because often our culture, we don't even care about meditation until you're having a mental breakdown, and then we hear, I've heard that'll work, I better go and do that instead. But actually you should learn to meditate no matter what you do, whether you're happy or not happy. So the goal isn't to make all the thoughts go away. The goal isn't to feel good. The goal isn't to relax. It's not an alternative to a pill. It's a training. It's like you go out there and jog. You're training your body. You're training yourself. And what you're training yourself to do is to stay on one thing, which means you're not following every thought, being berserk. That's the goal. And as you get more subtle, you go to these subtler levels. That's the long-term goal, Are we communicating, Luann?
Thank you, I would say, yes. And if you then do mantras, you could do them after your 3 minutes or something.
Yeah, all of that, of course. You see, the thing is, concentration is just this simple, bare bones technique of staying on one object for 2 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you're going to accomplish. So then, but I want to put it this way: the benefit of this for us in ordinary daily life, who are not great meditators, who aren't in the mountains for 2.5 years, the benefit for us of focusing on your breath for 5 minutes. While you're watching your breath, you're just training yourself to come back to the breath. Your mind wanders off, you catch it, you come back to the breath. You're spacing out, you catch yourself, you come back to the breath. You're training yourself to come back to the breath, because you won't stay there naturally. It's a lot of training. So then the thoughts are still going to be there. You don't get worried about that, but you're not buying into them. You're not having a dialogue with them. It's like those 100 voices. You just allow those 100 people to all chat away, and you don't get distracted by them. So so I would say the benefit for us ordinary people in daily life of doing merely a concentration technique for 5 minutes is that when you wake up, when you open up your eyes and start living your life, because you've been training yourself to focus on the breath, you can't help but hear all the chatting behind, and it's more vivid to you. So in your daily life, that's the purpose. You're doing the dishes, but you're watching your thoughts like a hawk. You're driving the car, but you're noticing the anger. You're noticing the annoyance, and you're going to catch those thoughts before they become full-blown emotions. That's the real benefit in daily life. It enables you to become more and more clear about the chaos in your mind and know what to do with it as it's arising before you go crazy and want to kill yourself or your boyfriend. You get my point, Luann? So then the other aspect of practice, yes. You see, the actual job of merely watching your breath, as Lama Zopa says, thieves need mindfulness. So don't get carried away just because we're sitting there with our legs crossed and our eyes crossed or our eyes closed or whatever it is, that we're being holy. No, what makes it holy is your motivation. Why am I doing this? Because I want to develop my qualities. I want to be a benefit to others. Your motivation makes the concentration beneficial, because concentration in its nature is neither good nor bad. The other thing is, you then add to your practice all these very powerful things like mantras, visualizing, saying prayers. They keep you connected to the Buddha, and that you create lots of virtue, and you open your heart from those qualities. So it's a combination of this bare bones focus, then it is the skill to see your mind, and then learning to see your mind and work with your thoughts, and less deluded and more virtuous, plus connecting to the Buddhas by your mantras and your visualizations and your other things. Do you understand? That's a good combination practice. Thanks, Luann. Anybody else? Nobody. Okay. Okay. So again, just to remind us, when we study the mind, the Buddhist model of the mind, It's this very specific presentation of the contents of the mind, and it's not the way we think in modern psychology. We use a whole different model there. So we're discussing, in this one, we're discussing the conceptual thoughts, which includes all our feelings and our emotions and our anger and our attachment and our generosity and our love and our kindness and our depression. So we divide all those into two categories. Those that are I-based, fear-based, self-centered, neurotic, unhappy, miserable, distorted, delusional, disturbing. Many words you can say. And this is the rubbish that causes us pain, that causes us to live in la-la land, and that causes us to harm others. Then we've got the positive thoughts, the virtuous thoughts, the love, compassion, wisdom, kindness, clarity, self-confidence, forgiveness, the positive thoughts. At the moment, our mind is a big soup of all of these mixed together. Now, the tragedy is that's the negative ones for most of us that loom large. Check your anxiety and your worries every day. How you never think you're enough. You haven't accomplished enough. I don't do enough practice. I'm not thin enough. I'm not fat enough. I'm not intelligent enough. My hair is wrong. My nose is wrong. The negative thoughts always seem to loom larger than the positive. And then, like one person, I remember, I think it was on like one of the social media. I do these little kind of 2-minute videos every few days. And then one of them was, I talked about how we can then calm, you watch the negative thoughts and then you replace them by positive thoughts. And she said, that was a revelation. I never thought of that, she said. I knew I had to watch my negative thoughts, but to suddenly think I could actually have a positive thought. And this is often how we think. We're a bit passive. We simply sit back and observe the crazy thoughts and get so depressed because my thoughts are so crazy. But we never think that we can have control over them. We never think that we can decide to put some positive thoughts in there instead. We wait for the positive thoughts to come rather than consciously having the positive thoughts. I mean, it is a revelation because we're so passive about our mind. You can just sit there and think positive thoughts all day. You can decide to do it. It's an incredible practice. It's easy. I mean, if you want to think about it in a passive way, I always joke and talk about all my crazy roommates. The negative ones are running the show most of the day. They're out the house going crazy. But the positive ones are kind of quietly living in the closet and under the mattress. They're scared to come out. We've got to start bringing the good thoughts out, having them consciously, It seems it's so simple because our mind is our mind. We can have any damn thought we like. We can mold our mind into any shape we like, as Lama Zopa says, So we have the neurotic, deluded, I-based, miserable thoughts, and we have the positive ones. So now in concentration meditation, you don't want any of them. You can't stop them, but the goal isn't to enhance the virtuous ones. The goal isn't to make the negative ones go away. In the end, you're diverting them. You're sort of not paying attention to them. You're paying attention to the breath. All your focus goes on the breath. There's nothing cosmic about the breath. It just happens to be there. It's a useful object. So then that means you're not paying attention to the thoughts. And that's just like if you're watching that television and all the people shouting in the kitchen, it literally goes quiet for you. They haven't gone quiet. They're still chatting, but you're not paying attention to them. So it's a discipline. It's a discipline, And then because you're disciplining yourself to just watch the breath, you can't help but hear the thoughts, but you're not paying attention to them. It's out of the corner of your eye, you can notice them. It's like when you're driving the car. There's 6 lanes of cars. There's chaos on that road. But you're focusing completely on your job at hand to absolutely not lose the plot for 1 second on exactly what you're doing and how you're doing it. But out of the corner of your eye, you can see the cars over in the 3rd lane. You can see the cars behind, but you're not rushing off to them. And that's when we go berserk. That's when if we don't have a stable mind and the one car comes behind you and he toots his horn, we have a panic attack. But if you're really focused, you'll let the damn guy toot his horn behind you and you won't care, because you're focused on what you're doing. But we're too unstable. We get so emotional because we all want people to love us. So on the road, as soon as it starts getting chaotic, we give up and have a panic attack and then we crash because we haven't got focus. We haven't got the stability to stay on what we decide to stay on. It's like a courageous mind, You're having control over your mind. So the sign that you're succeeding isn't that suddenly all your thoughts will go away. Maybe your thoughts are feeling more berserk. Well, that's a good sign. You're seeing your thoughts. So be happy, So understanding these things is so important. Otherwise we have all these misconceptions about whether we're successful or not, And the other one is, again, misleading, like I mentioned to Paul. People who like to sit quietly and can sit very quietly, very comfortably, think they're concentrating. No, they're just spacing out, and that's not meditation. It's not concentration. It's relaxation, but this is not a relaxation technique. There are many nice relaxation techniques. We need them. We're all crazy. But this is not to relax. Eventually, when you've got concentration, you'll be blissfully relaxed, but that's not the goal, you know. This is concentration. And until you advance, you're not going to have, until you've got shamatha, until you've got concentration, single pointed, your mind's going to be out of control. But you learn the discipline, at least in daily life, of not allowing them to take you over, of not running the show, you know, of being more, you're more disciplined, you're more focused, and you're buying into your virtues more. That's the sign of a good practitioner. You're not wearing your heart on your sleeve, you know, which is how we tend to do. Okay, so in Mahamudra, it's exactly it's a combination of the two modes of meditation. Now, in the first one, which is concentration, the object that you're concentrating on isn't a visualization of the Buddha, isn't a mantra, isn't the breath. It's the beginning, the very beginning is whatever thoughts pop up in your mind. Whatever thoughts pop up in your mind. Initially, it feels like a harder thing to locate. It's easy to locate the breath. It's something very evident. But suddenly you feel like you're drowning a bit if you start to focus on your thoughts. You kind of think, oh, where are my thoughts? You know, what am I supposed to be focusing on? You space out a bit. But the whole idea of concentration is exactly the same as if the object were your breath. But it's learning to watch your thoughts without commentary, without analysis, without fearing about they shouldn't be there or should be there, not worrying about them. Simply, it's like that those 100 people, the 100 crazy roommates. It's like you've got 100 people next door all shouting and yelling. You simply watch them. You listen. You observe the thought. You observe what they're saying. You don't analyze it. You don't criticize it. You don't have an opinion about it. You simply watch. This is a very intense practice in daily life. This is a revelation for us. Oh, I'm running out of battery. Okay, so this is something very helpful for the day. This is, again, a really skillful way to live our lives in daily life. Okay, forget it. And this is the way you'd bring, as Lama Yeshe says in his book, the concept of this Mahamudra of watching your thoughts, which is just the first part of the technique, into your daily life. What happens with us is, because we're so unstable, as soon as we hear a noise outside, let's think about this. As soon as we hear a noise, check what happens. This is the process. Let's say you hear the noise. Next second, you label it a loud car. Next second, you have aversion. And that's called anger. Think about it. And then another noise will come, and you might say, oh, that's the ocean waves. And you'll go, that's a lovely sound. Now listen to this. This is how we go from in day to day and how we're responding to all the external stimulus, you know, the sounds, the shapes, the colors, the smells. We can see the objects of the senses. Because the objects of the senses is basically our world, and we are constantly responding to them. Think about this. But it's unconscious. So naturally, because we all want happy feelings, and what will trigger happy feelings is when we meet a sound that we are attached to, that we label good, like the ocean, let's say. Or if we meet a sound that we label bad, like the loud car, we then have aversion for it. So we are running like drunken sailors between these objects of the senses that we think are nice, which then we say trigger a happy feeling, and then the objects of the senses that we call ugly, which trigger the unhappy feeling. And then we have aversion for the unhappy ones, and we have attachment to the others. Now, a normal life is living completely immersed like that and responding mindlessly to the thousands of stimuli every single day. And we wonder why we go crazy. We wonder why we want to kill people or kill ourselves, because it's a completely mindless process. So this whole job, watching your breath, or in this case, watching your thoughts, which is much more intimate, is a skill where you're learning to not respond like an infant to every damn thing that goes on, you know. It's very powerful practice. So here, simply watching the thoughts. So if you're watching your thoughts in the day-to-day life, you're catching yourself, you're walking on the street and a noise comes. So what happens is normally you rush off to the noise and then you have an opinion and then you're lost. But this job here is you hear the noise, but you notice the aversion arise and you don't buy into it. You notice the attachment arise and you don't buy into it. You stay more stable, like you become more objective. This is such a powerful practice. You're training yourself to be more disciplined, not to be absorbed in every single tiny sensory object. So our trouble is we assume the busy traffic is what makes us exhausted. We assume when you go to the beach, the pleasant waves make you happy. Yes, they can. It's important to get a peaceful environment sometimes. But in the end, when we've got control over our mind, you can be in the middle of the freeway, and because you've got control over your mind, you know what's going on, you can have a happy mind. It won't disturb you. That's what we're trying to do. This is the minimum requirement of learning to be a Buddhist. Hearing the thoughts, labeling that thought was, recognizing that's how I labeled that sound. Now this is what's so an interesting experience. So I heard some story of some Lama told this story about one of his disciples, but I think it's something we really are familiar with. This fellow had been doing a retreat, and then he was driving in the car, and then he had to stop at a motel, and he stayed the night, and he heard all this sound, and he felt so happy because it was near the ocean. He heard these waves. It was very peaceful. And he woke up in the morning, and he discovered it was the freeway. There was no waves at all. It was the freeway. And I know one of my siblings, my brother, lives in the country, and sometimes depending on the way the wind is, you can hear the waves of sounds from the freeway. But I swear to you, you just have to call it waves, and it is like waves. It's just this sound in the background. So, but he hears it as the freeway and goes crazy. So we can see that yes, there is a thing called a freeway, and the loud noises of bikes and engines and the pollution, you could argue that is a trigger for making the mind stressed. But really it's very obvious that if we label something differently, and this is proving emptiness. This is such a powerful practice, you know. That's why my friend's in prison. That's what I said before to Luann. It's not that easy. But labeling things differently. I always quote my friend Sunny from Ireland, who's now out of prison after 17 years of hell. She's out for years now, accused of murdering 2 policemen with a husband. He even got executed. And 17 years living in these cells for years, totally, finally found to be innocent. But as she said, at some point I realized I could not change anything, but they couldn't take my mind from me. So she said, and it's really dramatic, I decided I'm not a prisoner, I'm a monk. I'm not in a cell, I'm in a cave. So she literally, radically relabeled. She didn't live in a fantasy world. She knew damn well it was called prison, but she called it something different, which means she stopped resisting it, she stopped getting angry about it, she stopped hating it, she stopped all the negativity, she became positive about it. So she saw things differently. This is the very essence of being a Buddhist. This is really what the final goal of all of it is to not believe in these thoughts and the labels and to realize nothing has an intrinsic nature. That's emptiness. This is a powerful example every day by watching your thoughts. So there's different things also. In the meditation, when you do it, you're not analyzing the thoughts, you're just watching the thoughts. There's no opinion. You're not saying it's bad or good. That's a crucial step. But in your daily life, there's another way where you can also use analysis. And you hear the attachment arise to the wave in the ocean, this crashing water, so loud you can't even hear yourself talk. Louder than the freeway, but you call it good. So you notice, aha, that's attachment. So therefore I call it good. So guess what? It appears good to me. This is how everything exists. But whereas we think the ocean waves are intrinsically good, we think the freeway sounds are intrinsically bad, we can prove that's not true. And that's where you do the analysis, and that's powerful. But this first step in Mahamudra, in concentration, is to merely watch the thoughts. So step back from the thoughts and stop being immersed in them without any awareness, So there's different practices. The aim isn't just to only forever watch the thoughts and leave it there, because that can be nihilism. You know, I remember talking to some people who helped with people in prison and was really so inspired by them in a particular country I went to. And one woman talked about the meditation she would lead. And it was just to merely watch the thoughts. There's anger, there's jealousy, there's love. You need to do that. You need to label them accurately. But like if you were watching a garden, you need to say there is a weed and there is a herb, but you just don't forever say, oh, there's a weed and there's a herb. Finally, that awareness has to lead you to decide what the hell to do with the weed and what the hell to do with the herb. So that's where some people can just say, oh, that's just the practice. You just say, oh, there's anger. And I said, well, what do you do with the anger eventually? Oh, you just leave it there. Well, that's like saying, well, you just leave the herbs there. You leave the weeds there. Well, I'm sorry, the weeds will take over and will choke your herbs because that's their character. So the first step is to not analyze, is to observe. That's anger, that's jealousy, that's love. But then you've got to decide what to do with them. That's the proaction, that's the practice. Just to say you watch your thoughts and leave it there, that's being nihilistic, you know. Are we communicating? Good. This is the substance of being a Buddhist, you know. Call it Mahamudra, call it Shamatha, I don't care. It's the job of being a Buddhist, being your own therapist, as Lama Yeshe put, you know. And then when you've got more and more understanding of what the hell is in your mind, you're not scared of it, you realize it's just old stuff, you know it's been there since beginningless time, you don't buy into the thoughts so seriously, you know, and this is the crucial one, that the negative thoughts don't define you, and this is a major step forward. And then you have them, then they're much lighter. As soon as you know that they're not defining who you really are, and this is Buddha's final point. You know, I always quote this, when you look at the word Buddha, which is the final goal of all of this, Bud implies the total eradication from your mind of all the delusions, and Da implies the development to perfection of all the goodness. This is the crucial end result. So when you know that, that tells you the method, which means you've got to learn botany so you can distinguish in that big mass of overgrown green stuff in our mind. You've got to distinguish between the herbs and the weeds, but then you have to know what to do with them. That's the real skill. You pull out the weeds and you grow the herbs. You pull out the delusions eventually and you grow the goodness to perfection. That's the job. That underpins all the job you have to do. But our trouble is we don't know what these thoughts have come from. We know our mummy didn't teach us these crazy thoughts. We don't know where they come from. Because they're so loud and they feel so fierce and they grasp so strongly, we believe they are who we really are. And this is the greatest tragedy of suffering sentient beings. We believe the stories that anger and resentment and jealousy and depression tell us. We believe they are the truth. This is the tragedy. So as Lama Zopa says, you know, like say with attachment to the cake on the plate, it's bad enough that the cake appears delicious to you instead of thinking that your attachment is painting it as delicious. It's bad enough that it appears delicious to you and that you believe that it'll make you happy. But the killer is you think that's a true description. So at least, as Lama Zopa says, stop believing in our own karmic appearances is a very powerful practice. So you see the attachment. You see the anger when the boyfriend is mean to you and you have this anger about the boyfriend. You see that he appears ugly to you, but part of your mind goes, don't believe in your karmic appearances, Rabina. It's just your anger painting a picture. This is stupendous. Just that puts atomic bombs under the habits, you know. And you can't do that if you don't see your thoughts. And you can't see your thoughts until you, at least we're talking the Buddhist view, have this Buddhist analysis of the distinction between a negative thought and a positive thought, which is unique to the Buddha. This is not how we talk in modern psychology. It sounds like judgment. We wouldn't like to say that in our modern psychology. And the other point is this, we're so addicted. We know we're angry. We know we're jealous. We know we're depressed. But we're so addicted to believing the boyfriend causes it, the job causes it, the pain causes it. So therefore we don't have a choice. That's where we become paralyzed. And that's not valid. It feels true. The boyfriend was mean to me. The pain in the body is unbearable. I am in prison wrongly accused. They're facts. But we can learn to identify the thoughts that interpret those events and to change the interpretation. That's being your own therapist. That's being a Buddhist. It's pretty tasty. So concentration, the first mode, is a method to help us do this job better, because we see things more and more clearly every day, you know. And basically in concentration meditation, you're stepping out of your own head. You're watching the breath. You're watching the thoughts. And there's an observer, which is your attention, paying attention. And you're not absorbing into everything, you know. That's the big skill. It's time to go practically. Any more questions? People, dearest people. No questions? No, nothing? So we can finish with another 2 minutes of watching our mind again, like we did last week. Let's do that. So people treat it as a, oh yes, there you go, Luann, darling. Yes, talk to me.
I just wanted to go to something you just said that's important, you know, thinking about the weeds, and you see them and you identify them and you identify the, and you then, so part of this whole goal of this process, from what you said, is to then be able to see your delusions for what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And then you said to do something about them. So
yeah, good.
I missed that.
Exactly.
How so help me
okay, darling. Good. Exactly,
bridge.
Luann.
Yeah.
Exactly. This is exactly what Sunny in prison did. She didn't call it this. She's not a Buddhist. She did, but this is what she did. She could see, so I'm putting words into it. There she is in a prison, wrongly accused. She didn't kill anybody, but she's accused of killing 2 policemen. She's in this nightmare. Her husband even got executed. When she went to the execution while she was in prison, even his head burst into flames. She had her children who were given to her parents. Her parents got killed in a car accident. The kids went into the system. Story after nightmare occurred for her, you know. So she was in her cell for years on end on her own. They gave her a Bible and that's it, 24 hours a day, up and down in this small cell. So it's enough conditions to make a normal person go completely out of their brain. So what's going on here is a very intense external environment, meaning lots of noise on the freeway, day and night, and you naturally, if you don't feel you have any control over the thoughts, in fact, we feel that the freeway is the reason I'm miserable. We don't even pay attention to the thoughts. So the first step we have to realize is, my God, there is thoughts here. Now, what are those called? Well, the one that's freaking us out is called aversion. And what's aversion, or anger, is the response when attachment doesn't get what it wants. So the junkie in us is attachment. It runs the show. So as long as attachment keeps getting the waves on the ocean and the pretty taste and the pretty smells, pleasant feelings will arise, and then we'll think, well, of course I've got to keep getting ocean waves and keep getting pretty smells because they're the cause of my happiness. That's the view. But when we start to realize that the aversion is the over-exaggeration of the ugliness of the freeway sound, and the attachment is the over-exaggeration of the pretty wave sound, we start to we give more power to our thoughts. So there's Sunny sitting in prison. She can't get out. She said, I finally realized I couldn't change anything. So the work you then do is, this is the words I'd use for Buddhism, her attachment absolutely wasn't getting what it wanted. She was getting a total nightmare, these nightmarish environments. So what she decided she could do was change the interpretation. So anger is saying, how dare this happen to me? This is wrong. How dare all those freeway sounds be coming? So what are you going to do with those thoughts? You see that they're called aversion. They're called anger. How dare the ocean, how dare the freeway sounds be there? This is why I'm feeling distressed. You start to realize you can't make the freeway sounds go away because you're in prison, but you can change your thoughts about the freeway sounds. You can start to call them good. You can start to see them differently. That's the work you have to do. So you first got to notice there is anger in the mind, and then notice that anger is what is calling the freeway ugly, and then you realize it's merely a thought, and you can actually call it something different. Depends on the thing. So your boyfriend, he just did hit you. No argument. Everybody saw it. So, there's lots of ways of interpreting that. So, for example, when I did Kung Fu, I got punched in the nose, but I didn't have a mental breakdown. I didn't freak out. I didn't get angry. It was probably a bigger punch than my boyfriend ever gave me, but I actually was taught to think, well, that was my fault. I didn't get out of the way in time, and I kept on sparring. So this is an example. My friend Sunny in prison, nobody wants to be in that prison, but she had the ability to change the interpretation. That's the power of thoughts. Thoughts aren't set in stone. So you learn to first notice its attachment. So then what do? Attachment is this over-exaggeration of the deliciousness of the cake and the belief that when I get the cake, I'll get happy. And it completely drives us, and there's no consciousness. We just leap to the cake and shove it in the mouth. So then you can be conscious and notice that the attachment is a lie. It's a thought that is over-exaggerating the deliciousness of the cake. So you argue with attachment. And you say, no, the cake isn't that delicious after all. Did you notice, Robina, that yesterday it made me vomit? So how can it be innately delicious? So you argue with the viewpoint, which is what attachment is. It's a viewpoint. It's not just a feeling. Anger is not just a feeling. It's a viewpoint. When you get to see the viewpoint, you argue with those viewpoints. That's the point. It's all concept. It's cognitive therapy. You with me? Good. Okay, great. So time to go home. Forget about watching our mind. We just did it for an hour and a half. Okay, darlings. Jang Chub Sem Chog Rinpoche. Ma kie panam ke guchi ke panyam pa me pa yang. Gong ne gong du pa ba shog ge wa di nyu de dag lama sange drub gyo ne. Drowa chikyang malu pa. De yi sala go pa shog. That's it. Goodbye. See you next time. Thank you, sweetie pies. Thank you, people in Romania. Thank you, Doina. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you, darlings.
Thank you,
Bye.
Venerable Rabina.
Bye, sweethearts.